Today on the official Marvel podcast, we're covering the final 2 episodes of Marvel Television's Agatha All Along with stars Kathryn, Hahn and Joe Locke.
I think if you ask any young person to be in a Marvel project is the dream. And so to actually have done it and be a part of it is pretty amazing.
We've also got Agatha All Along executive producer and head writer Jac Schaeffer here to reveal some of the secrets behind the show you may have missed.
I'm hopeful that audiences will delight in going back and seeing the evidence of it all along.
We're also talking to the writers of maybe the catchiest song on TV this year, The Ballad of the Witch's Road, Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez.
Jac was like, I want that kind of drama. I want that
so much drama,
that intensity.
Yeah.
I want that kind of spell to be cast through music, and I know you guys could do it.
I'm Langston Belton.
And I'm Victoria Ying.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
I can't believe we finally reached the end of The Witch's Road. Well, maybe not all of us.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a character that everyone kind of fell in love with, and then to see her worldview, her story kind of get expanded upon. Talk about sticking the landing. It was such a well-intentionally created show. I don't know anyone that made the show, but I'm proud of them. I'm proud of this show working and doing its thing, you know?
For sure. I'm so excited to watch it again. I want to go back and I want to notice all the Easter eggs that I missed. I want to come at it this time knowing where it's going and just seeing the craftsmanship that went into the writing and how well they were able to pull off this extremely complicated puzzle of a TV show. And I'm just so stunned and impressed by what they did.
You know, before we get into all the crazy stuff, we definitely need to hit our spoiler warning.
As we mentioned earlier, episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha All Along marked the end of our story, and it revealed a lot about Agatha Harkness's complicated history that helps explain her dynamic with Teen, aka Billy Maximoff. Here's Kathryn Hahn.
It kind of makes sense that I've taken on Teen as my surrogate son and want to protect him, even though I can't show it. I love him and want to protect him at all costs. And that I feel that part of Agatha's self has been buried for a very long time.
Here's Kathryn Hahn reflecting on what she learned about herself during her time playing Agatha Harkness.
I found power in myself. I think that I didn't quite own in the same way before this show character.
As for Joe Locke, his time on the show was shaped by his peers.
Oh, I mean, for me, I think I learned so much stuff. I was saying in the crossing before, I feel the shooting period was when being around these amazing people and getting to play this incredible layered and complicated part, I really figured out me for the first time ever.
Joe also reflected on his time working with co-star Aubrey Plaza.
It's amazing. I mean, Aubrey is so effortlessly cool anyway, but then you put her in the death outfit and she just is a crazy witch in the best way. It was a fun week of shooting that ending scene. It was just great. Also, it's always just funny, whenever you're wearing the super suits Marvel security make you wear these black capes over your costumes, but you still can see the cape and the boots holding out, and walking to Crafty getting a coffee with Aubrey as in her death crown and me in my crown while sipping a coffee walking back to set is always a funny thing to see.
Joe shared a scene with Aubrey alongside Kathryn Hahn during the big climactic fight against death. Here's Joe Locke on what the lead up to that moment looked like.
We ended up filming most of it where all 3 of us weren't in the same room at the same time, which was because of the scale of the whole of the set was they built the entirety of Agatha's house and her backyard in one big soundstage, which was amazing to see. And so me and Aubrey would be somewhere else and just with a megaphone, because then the sound design is great, but when you're actually filming it, there's just huge 10-foot wide fans, so you just can't hear a single thing. But there was one when Aubrey throws me into the greenhouse, I got to do the start of that stunt actually with me, and it was great fun to get actually be on wires and get thrown in the air, and that's the cool stuff. You want the Marvel-y cool stunty stuff. It makes you feel cool.
The finale also saw the culmination of Billy and Agatha's relationship. The duo finally learned how to trust each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting dynamic there because we start with Agatha very much in like the power, with all the power, and Billy sort of as teen, sort of almost taking advantage of that as we learn. But in the moment, you think he's just like this placid sidekick. And then as like the episodes go on, I think firmly by episode 8, Billy's in all the power. He is definitely in charge of the relationship and holds the key almost to it, which is great fun to play with and have like the dynamic shifts. But I think there's by that point there's definitely a respect with each other. And I mean, in episode 9 he tries to kill her again. So well, she's already dead, but re-kill her, banish her. So there definitely is still a lot of animosity between them, but it's almost like it's like a love-hate relationship. It's like those like really toxic relationships where they just somehow stay together and it works for them. But also like there's definitely a maternal son bond there, which me and Kathryn play with a lot, and definitely a love as the series gets to the end. And no, it's a very, very weird love-hate relationship.
And unlike in Marvel Studios' WandaVision, it wasn't Agatha pulling the strings this time. In fact, it's revealed that it was Billy who conjured up the Witch's Road. Here's Joe Locke on his initial reaction after he learned the truth.
I think I like audibly gasped and was like really giddy because I know it's such a cool twist and makes everything make so much sense. And it also like, I don't know, shows the extent of Billy's powers and how he's so much like his mother, even subconsciously. Also a great layer to play of like knowing that when we were filming all of the road scenes, being able to be like, oh, see where Jac and her in Raising Writers laid the seeds of Agatha being like, oh, it's trials. And then next thing we know, trials pop up. And you notice all of these things happen because Agatha suggests them to Billy and then it just happens and it appears. It's just so clever and so great to play to be like, oh, is he in my head being like, oh, is Billy actually okay in this moment? Because subconsciously he knows he's going to be okay because he's actually making it with his brain. So therefore he's not really as that stressed because he actually knows, even though he doesn't know, but he does know he's going to be okay. So it's a really like warped like mind trick of like, we with all the directors of our episodes, we had a lot of conversations about like, oh, why is Billy acting like this in this scenario? Because like, does he know this thing? And I don't know. And also like, I think what's so great about it is it's so, when you know it's so obvious and you see it, like even like I didn't know you had it in you, and all the Ouija board in the bedroom. And when we were filming the reveal scene, we were trying to figure out what we should put in the bedroom to, if it's too obvious or not too obvious. But I think when you're not looking for those things, you can really quite lay it in quite thick, and which then makes for when the reveal happens even more shocking and great. And that's what Jac is so amazing at creating, is these twists that are such good twists because they're almost right in front of you the whole time. And you could work it out if you had like the right information, but you just never do.
And if you're like me and can't stop thinking about the scene where Billy searches for a body for his brother Tommy's spirit, well, you're not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, that scene was an amazingly hard scene to film. It's so intense and so emotionally, I don't know. It's one of those weird, like, Marvel-y scenes where the emotions are so high, but also it's so, like, unrealistic at the same time. And we were trying to make it realistic, and it was almost like the emotional peak for Billy as a character. Like, this whole time, the reason he's there is to get Tommy, and now he's finally... Agatha is doing the thing that he has wanted her to do the whole time, is to help him get his brother back. We really played a lot with the grey area of Billy, of, like, he kills 3 people. His best friends, he's killed them. Whilst he doesn't do it on purpose, he still did it. And I don't know, in the same way that Wanda does bad things in a good, meaning way. Am I killing this brother? This boy so my brother can live. I think Billy would kill this boy so his brother can live. But he's still got a good heart in there, and he's not actually a bad person. He just does bad things sometimes, and so that's like the sign of like him not being bad. And I don't know. It was really great to be able to play all those different notes of like, not evil, but definitely a darkness within the character. Like inherently he's born with it. So.
And finally, here's Joe Locke on what it's like to be part of Agatha all along and joining the MCU.
I am grateful to have been part of the show and happy to be part of the Marvel family now. And I know it's like, I think if you ask any like young person, like to be in a Marvel project is like the dream. And so to actually have done it and be a part of it is pretty amazing.
We also got a chance to catch up with Agatha All Along's head writer and executive producer, Jac Schaeffer, and chat spoilers now that the show has wrapped up.
Yeah, and if you've been trying to figure out how it was Billy all along, Jac says the signs have been there the entire time.
I'm hopeful that audiences will delight in going back and seeing the evidence of it all along. There's, of course, the sort of like the literal production design pieces of it. His room is the road. We sort of treated his room like the inside of his brain. And that's the notion, is that his subconscious made the road. So we needed to visualize that, right? It's TV, you got to see it on the screen. So even when we see his room as William Kaplan, you know, there's the nod to like the Wizard of Oz book, and there are other sort of like touchstones in there. But like anytime you look at the room, there's evidence. There's the leaves hanging, you know, all the things that he pulls out at the end. But also the credits are actually a map of his brain and his investigative spirit, you know, looking into Agatha, looking into witchcraft. So the credits themselves actually give it up early on. I mean, it's too obscured, but it's there. But the deep dive that I'm excited for, like any, you know, if there are true fans of the show, to me, the deep dive is Agatha's face. If you watch her from the moment the trapdoor appears, like she is shocked. You know, when she steps onto the road and she's covering her shock, she looks at him, you know, she knows. And so all along the way, how she speaks to him is a clue. And there's also the sort of like extra layer of she has to be careful because she knows it's subconscious. So she can't like push him too far. She's got to like, you know, like Wanda, she's got to be careful with the psyche. Otherwise, the ceiling's going to come down on her. I will say, though, that it is Billy all along, but really it's Agatha all along once you understand the origin of the ballad. So I will die on that hill.
Here's Jac on what she hopes fans will ultimately take away from the show.
I mean, I do think it is about community. I think it's about outsiders finding each other, you know, people who feel marginalized, finding affinity with each other, with a group of sort of mixed bag misfits. I also think like Agatha's ultimate journey, it is very much about motherhood and grief again. And I think Kathryn went so deep with this role, and the sort of, you know, the opening of 109 is sort of our lowest, deepest moment of the show. And then, of course, we sort of pick back up when we get into the fun and we land it as a fun Marvel series, I think, in an authentic way. But I hope people can like hold that, the sort of the gravity and the enormity of what we're saying is the truth of this character.
All episodes of Agatha All Along are now available to stream only on Disney+.
Agatha All Along was such a hit song when it premiered in WandaVision. So when we got to talk to the Oscar and Grammy Award-winning writers Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez, we had to know if they felt any sort of pressure in writing the follow-up for this series.
I suppose we would have felt a lot of pressure had we not been given such amazing material from Jac Schaeffer. Like Jac Schaeffer took that moment where we felt like, oh, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And made it so easy for us because we were so excited by her work and her scripts and her ideas for how music would work.
Just as we were during WandaVision.
Yes.
Jac has this innate talent for how music can work within a story in a way that is different from musical theater, obviously, but still really powerful. And I think she loves music. She understands a lot about it without being a musician herself, but she knows exactly what it's doing in her story. And it always plays this interesting emotional part as well as a plot part and a very complex part. So I think it's very original and cool.
The Ballad of the Witch's Road is unique in that it has a variety of versions that span from Lorna Woo's 70s rock version to the Sacred Chant version and more. Here's how the Lopezes approached crafting a melody that would work with different genres and contexts.
Well, I assume that because you're Marvel, we could talk about the final one. Because honestly, that's the one that I thought of first, because that's where it had to come from. It had to have that simple walking mother and child kind of humming song that you make up as a parent. And we certainly made up so many of those with our kids when they were little. So we knew that it had to have this nursery rhyme-ish kind of quality to it. And yet it also needs to do all these other things. So that kind of laid out the task. Once we knew we had a song that could work for the 70s thing, the Sacred Chant, and the nursery rhyme. Honestly, most pop hits are nursery rhyme-like. They're so simple. They're so gettable. And that's why this was like so perfectly set up for us. It's because of the nursery rhyme.
Yes, the dun 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 dun. But then we started with the 70s version in terms of writing putting together the puzzle that had to have 10 different elements and plot points and set up all the witches and be a love song and have a Lorna Woo's protection spell in there. We did the hardest one first so that it would be a situation of peeling back after. But it was kind of always in dialogue with the way that the song gets written in episode 8 and what needed to be in the Sacred Chant to start the journey. I was looking at both scenes and both sets of all the language in those scenes and sort of highlighted specific words in all of them, and then channeling them into a 70s version of a love song of someone being like, are we going to stay in this relationship or not? Which I also think ultimately is the big theme of what Agatha deals with. Agatha is always toggling between, am I going to be myself and vulnerable and truly connect with someone, or am I a witch who walks alone? And you never know where she is. And so that was easy to channel into a love song, because I think everybody who's teetering at that place of, are we going to commit to each other or not, lives in that place of will I open or not, knowing that the journey's going to be scary.
On the topic of the 70s version of the Ballad of the Witch's Road, here's what the duo had to say about the influences that went into that song.
Yeah, Jac's favorite, I don't know if it's her favorite band, but one of her favorite bands is Fleetwood Mac. And she wanted us to take a look at the song Silver Spring, which is such a great song. I don't think I really knew it that well. I think I had heard it once.
I didn't.
And there's that one live recording of it where
she just sings.
She sings it right at Lindsey Buckingham, and then he looks up at her at one point, and they just lock eyes. And Jac was like, "I want that kind of drama. I want that
so much drama,
that intensity.
Yeah,
I want that kind of spell to be cast through music." And I know you guys could do it. That was a lot to live up to, but that was a big learning thing for us because we didn't really know Stevie Nicks that well, and now, boy, are we fans. Jeez.
And I think our own musical backgrounds. Both of us grew up singing in churches, singing liturgical music. I was in a early Renaissance madrigal group my first year of college at William and Mary. So I was singing those old a cappella things.
Yeah, and I sang Gregorian chants in college in my Episcopal church for pocket money.
And then both of us, musical theater, you kind of find yourself learning the history of American music, because you can go from the classic Gilbert and Sullivan and then see how ragtime and jazz came in and turned into the blues and turned into rock and roll and turned into pop. Doing what we do, you definitely are always channeling different versions of American music.
Yeah, and every version of it needs to cast its own spell. If it's the blues, it's a sort of thump and a sort of a laid back guitar part, or in the Sacred Chant, it's that bell that just sends shivers down your spine, and this kind of solemn intonation. And then in the Lorna Woo version, I wanted to make sure, because another reference song for me was Hotel California, which features the 12-string acoustic guitar, which is most guitars have 6 strings. The 12-string has 12, and so 2 sets of strings, 1 an octave up. So it just sends you shivers down your spine.
It casts a spell.
Yeah, and then obviously Nikki's version had to be
Innocent,
endearing, innocent, charming, and we just used 1 fiddle.
And as for the ballad, here's what details they focused on this time around.
For the ballad, I was thinking that Agatha is this anti-hero who you never really know. She's so mischievous. Sometimes she surprises you with how kind she is, and sometimes how mean she can be, and how strong. So we wanted to play with light and dark, and so we're constantly changing the mode of the song, the musical mode, from major to minor, surprising. And I think that's part of what gives this very simple tune a little bit of richness that makes it more than just a nursery rhyme or a song that's written to mimic a style.
And on the lyric front, like the way that lyrics come together, phrases come together. In the 70s version, you're looking at sort of modern day kind of English. But then for the sacred chant, I went and found all these Wiccan texts and just looked at like, how do they even backphrase things and how do they use the language? It was affected by early English language. So using just a few of those details gives it its time and its tone.
Bringing the Ballad of the Witch's Road to life meant working with performers like Kathryn, Hahn, Sashir Zamata, Ali On, and more. Here's the Lopezes on what those performers brought to the song.
Kathryn has this leadership. Like she really did step in as number 1 on the call sheet and create this sense of play and witchiness. I think she brought a deck of tarot cards to the first day. They were all in costume going to sing the chant and like brought everyone together in this wonderful way.
I just admired that so much. She brought all this respect, validation, value, love, seeing each other. And it felt like a group. The minute we met them, they were already a bonded group, and they brought that to the performance.
Yes, Ali was a classical pianist, a competitive classical pianist. So she brought that musicality into the room. Sashir has this strength to her, but she had this wonderful
low key. I'm kind of obsessed with some of her reads on the songs, especially in the sacred chant. I'm like, I could go back and listen to her part.
Yes,
so good.
Sashir has this rich, gorgeous voice too, that just felt like the glue. And then you get Patti LuPone, and from my Evita days, I knew we had to put her on down, 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 down. It's just been a joy. The whole process has been a joy.
And Joe Locke is an incredible musician of his own right. He was in a Broadway show in the interim between filming this and coming out.
We're thinking, well, how can we use him?
How can
what
we
can
use
we put him in?
We got to use him more.
Yes.
He's part of the texture in this, but he should really have a standout moment. It wasn't called for in the script, but next time I'm going to get him.
While Agatha All Along saw the MCU debut of Billy Maximoff, his legacy in the comics has grown to almost rival that of his parents, the Scarlet Witch and Vision. In the comics, Billy, aka Wiccan, has been a member of the Young Avengers alongside his twin brother Tommy, aka Speed, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Strike Force, and even the Avengers. And in 2016's New Avengers issue number 16, written by Al Ewing, Billy is fighting side by side with fellow Avengers, including his boyfriend, Hulkling, in the second superhero civil war. When his team is threatened by an evil alternate reality version of Reed Richards and his team of villainous Revengers, Billy and the rest of the Avengers jump into action. Each member of the Avengers is paired up to fight against a Revenger, and for Billy, that means going up against a demonic entity known as Asti the All-Seeing. When Billy sees that his boyfriend is in trouble fighting his own villain, Billy kicks it into gear, delivering this line before defeating Asti and running to his partner's rescue. "See, I'm the child of a witch and an android. I'm their wish come true. bigger than magic, living information, retro-reincarnated in human form. Now, my brother, he'd give you a physical fight. He'd warp time and space to punch you 50 times a second. But when I warp time and space, I use my words, and I say I'm a bigger deal in this reality than you are. Now sit tight, you little pest, while we clean up the mess you made.
Next week on the Official Marvel Podcast, we've got the latest from Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again with Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio.
I'm still pinching myself that we're here doing this still. Like, it's been over 10 years since the first one, and, you know, we're very blessed.
Yes, I can't wait for that show. So excited. And hey, while you wait, make sure to subscribe to the show, rate this pod, and leave a comment or review wherever you're listening to this wonderful podcast.
That's all for now. This episode of the Official Marvel Podcast was hosted by Langston Belton and myself, Victoria Ying.
Our producer is Jasmine Estrada.
With help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Rai Dorsey.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.